Her old pickup broke down on a dusty Kentucky road, and 3 young cops told her to leave, fast. They mocked the urn on her seat, thinking she didn't belong. Then a 4-star general saw the badge on her truck, saluted, and everything changed. Sarah Jenkins wasn't just a driver. She was a hero carrying her fallen friend home. Why did those cops judge her? What made that general honor her? Could one woman's promise rewrite their story? Hit like, share your thoughts below, and subscribe to Black Echoes for tales of courage that echo forever. Sarah Jenkins eased out from under her battered pickup, sweat beading on her brow, grease staining her calloused hands. She'd been wrestling with a leaking fuel line, her tools scattered on the gravel near Fort Campbell's outer fence. The late summer sun burned low, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. Her truck, a relic from better days, bore a faded badge on its door, a black eagle clutching a star, the mark of Black Echoes, a unit buried in classified files. 3 young cops, badges glinting, loomed over her. "Ma'am, this is restricted. Move now," one snapped, eyeing the urn on her passenger seat with a smirk. The 2-lane highway carved through Kentucky's rolling hills, a quiet thread beneath a fading summer sky. Sarah Jenkins gripped the wheel of her weathered pickup, her eyes steady behind scratched sunglasses. On the passenger seat, an urn etched with Marcus Tate's name caught the soft glow of the sun. Beside it, a worn photo showed 2 soldiers, Sarah and Marcus, grinning in dusty combat gear, rifles slung low, their faces lit with a defiance only youth and war could forge. They'd been the heart of Black Echoes, a unit erased from official records but etched in blood and promises. "Take me home to Alabama, Sarah," Marcus had said, his voice rough but unwavering, his hand gripping hers in the chaos of a desert night. She glanced at the photo, her lips curving into a faint smile. "Almost there, old friend," she whispered. The truck's engine rumbled, a steady heartbeat against the silence. No radio played, no voice broke the quiet, only the clatter of tools in the back and the weight of memory. It came unbidden sometimes, the crack of gunfire, the burn of sand in her throat, Marcus's laugh slicing through the din. "Don't you dare quit on me," he'd said, his eyes fierce with trust. Now, mile by mile, she carried him home, through a land they'd bled for, keeping a promise that time couldn't break. The road stretched on, endless and patient, like the vow she'd made. The old pickup wheezed and died on a dusty service road, its engine giving out just shy of Fort Campbell's rusted fence. Sarah Jenkins knelt in the gravel, her hands deep in the truck's oily heart, coaxing a clogged fuel line with a worn wrench. The Kentucky sun burned fierce, its heat mixing with the faint tang of jet fuel drifting from the base. The urn on the passenger seat, engraved with Marcus Tate's name, sat beside a faded photo of them in combat gear, their smiles defiant against a desert sky. The Black Echoes badge on the truck's door, a stark eagle clutching a star, caught the fading light. 3 young white cops strode up, their boots grinding against the stones. The leader, his badge flashing, snapped, "Ma'am, this is restricted ground." "Move your truck." Sarah's wrench kept turning, her voice steady. "It's broke down. I'm fixing it." A second cop, his eyes narrow, leaned toward the open window, spotting the urn. "What's in there? Something you shouldn't have?" His tone carried a smirk, heavy with assumption. Sarah's fingers tightened on the tool, but her face stayed calm. "That's my friend," she said, low and clear. "He's going home to Alabama." The third cop scoffed, his laugh sharp and cold. "You're out of place here," he said, his words laced with a judgment that cut deeper than the summer heat. Sarah slid out from under the chassis, wiping grease on her jeans, her gaze locking onto theirs. "I'm on public land," she said, her voice firm but measured. "Check your rules." The lead cop stepped closer, his hand brushing his holster, his posture rigid with authority. "Fort Campbell's perimeter starts here. You're too close and we don't take chances." Sarah stood, her back straight, her eyes unflinching despite the sting of their words. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said. "Just keeping a promise." The cops exchanged looks, their certainty faltering but their stance unyielding. The badge on the truck gleamed, a silent witness to a history they couldn't grasp. Sarah turned back to her tools, her hands steady, her heart anchored by a vow forged in war, a vow to Marcus, to carry him home, no matter who stood in her way. Dust swirled on the gravel road, tension thick as Sarah Jenkins stood by her battered pickup, grease on her hands. The Black Echo's badge, an eagle clutching a star, glinted on the door. 3 young cops, badges flashing, demanded she leave Fort Campbell's edge, their smirks sharp at the urn etched with Marcus Tate's name. A low rumble broke the silence, tires crunching as a black SUV with military plates rolled up, dust catching the dying Kentucky sun. General William Carter stepped out, gray hair stark, 4 stars gleaming on his collar. His eyes swept the scene, locking on the badge. He froze, pulled back to Al Anbar, 2007. A major then, he'd led a unit at Firebase Echo, pinned under Taliban fire, bullets ripping the air. His men bled out, radios screaming. Black Echoes, 7 shadows, swept in, led by a woman's steady voice. Sarah Jenkins called the plays, Marcus Tate taking point, his silhouette sharp against flames. He shielded Carter's driver, taking a bullet that saved a life. 22 men walked out. Marcus didn't. Carter's chest tightened, the badge a marker of a debt unpaid. Carter raised a crisp salute, eyes fixed on Sarah. The cops faltered, bravado crumbling. "General, sir," the lead cop stammered. "She's trespassing." Carter's voice cut like steel. "Who are you?" Sarah wiped her hands on her jeans, standing tall. "Sarah Jenkins." Once Black Echoes. Carter's breath hitched. "Jenkins, Al Anbar." "You led the extract." He turned to the cops. "She's no trespasser. Get a mechanic." "Now." The youngest cop flushed. "But sir, she's just—" Carter snapped. "She's a hero. Stand down." The cop stepped back, eyes darting to the urn, its etched name glowing in the dusk. His partners shifted, hands hovering near belts, certainty gone. Sarah's chest eased, their judgment, out of place, shouldn't be here, fading like smoke. Marcus's laugh echoed in her mind, cutting through war's din, his hand gripping hers in the desert's chaos. "Keep moving, Sarah," he'd said, eyes fierce. She carried his ashes now, his promise through miles of asphalt. The urn sat steady, a quiet anchor. Carter stepped closer, voice soft. "I was at Firebase Echo. You saved 22 men, including me. Tate took a hit for my driver. I never thanked him." Sarah nodded, pride flickering beneath her calm. "Just our job," she said, fingers brushing a scar from that night. A graze Marcus had blocked. Carter's salute held, a bridge across years, respect settling on her shoulders. The cops stood silent, heads bowed, the urn now a solemn witness. Sarah glanced at it, Marcus's presence aflame in her chest. The road felt lighter, the world seeing her, and she stood ready to carry him home. The air hung thick with the memory of that standoff, Sarah Jenkins still standing by her battered pickup, the Black Echo's badge on its door, a quiet testament to a past few understood. General William Carter's salute had silenced the young cops. their footsteps fading as they retreated to call for help. Sarah's gaze drifted to the urn on her passenger seat, etched with Marcus Tate's name, its surface catching the last of Kentucky's golden light. Her mind slipped back, unbidden, to the deserts of Iraq, where the sun burned red and the ground trembled with war. The crack of gunfire echoed in her ears, sharp and relentless, as she and Marcus led black echoes through Al-Anbar's jagged valleys in 2007. They were 7 then, a shadow unit, moving like ghosts to pull pinned-down soldiers from a Taliban trap. Marcus, always at her side, took a hit shielding her, his blood staining the sand. "Get them out, Sarah," he gasped, his hand gripping hers. "Then take me home to Alabama." She dragged him to cover, her hands shaking, but the chopper came too late. He was gone, his laugh swallowed by the dust. Back on that Kentucky road, Sarah's fingers brushed the urn, her eyes stinging. She'd carried his promise ever since, through years of silence and miles of asphalt. Carter's voice broke her reverie. "You led that extract," he said, his tone heavy with awe. 15 men owe you their lives." Sarah shook her head, her voice low. "Marcus led with me. He stayed so we could run." The general nodded, his eyes distant. "I heard stories of black echoes, missions that never made the books. You walked through fire." Sarah's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "We burned plenty too." The memory surged again. Marcus's voice on comms, steady through the chaos, urging her forward. "Don't stop, Sarah." Never stop. Now, she was keeping that vow, carrying his ashes home, mile by grueling mile. The badge on her truck gleamed, a marker of a unit that officially never was, but whose scars she bore. Carter stood silent, as if honoring a ghost, while Sarah's heart held fast to Marcus, her promise unbroken. Sarah Jenkins stood in the sparse briefing room at Fort Campbell, the hum of an old ceiling fan cutting through the quiet. The urn bearing Marcus Tate's name rested on a table beside her, its presence as steady as her resolve. Rows of young soldiers faced her, their uniforms crisp, their eyes wide with curiosity. She didn't stand at the podium, just leaned against the table, her voice low but clear. "Black Echoes wasn't about medals or glory," she said. "We fought for the person next to us. Marcus Tate taught me that." Her fingers brushed the Black Echoes badge she'd pulled from her truck, its eagle and star worn but proud. A young soldier raised a hand, his voice hesitant. "Why didn't you ever tell this story?" Sarah's gaze softened, but her words were firm. "Because Marcus deserved the light more than I did. He stayed behind so we could live." The room stilled, the weight of her words settling like dust after a storm. Another soldier, barely 20, leaned forward. "Is it true Black Echoes was a myth?" Sarah's lips curved faintly. "We were real enough to bleed." She told them of Al-Anbar, 2007. 7 soldiers, no backup, pulling 15 men from a kill zone. Marcus had taken point, his laugh steady even as bullets tore the air. He said, "Keep moving, Sarah. Always move." Her voice caught, but she pressed on. He didn't make it, but his promise did. The urn gleamed under the room's dim light, a silent anchor. A grizzled sergeant in the back, his arms crossed, nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. Another soldier whispered, "I thought Black Echoes was just a story in training manuals." Sarah shook her head. "We were never in the books. But we were there." The soldiers sat straighter, their silence a kind of reverence. Sarah's words hung heavy, not for applause but for truth. She glanced at Marcus's urn, feeling his presence in the room, as if he were still beside her, urging her to speak, to make them understand what it meant to carry a promise through fire and time. The briefing room at Fort Campbell held its breath, the echo of Sarah Jenkins's words about black echoes still lingering. The urn with Marcus Tate's name sat on the table, a quiet sentinel, as young soldiers leaned forward, their faces a mix of awe and doubt. A lanky private stood, his voice sharp with skepticism. "How do we know this is real? You're just some woman fixing a truck." The room tensed, eyes darting between him and Sarah. She met his gaze, unflinching, and reached into her pocket, pulling out the Black Echoes badge. A worn eagle clutching a star, forged from shrapnel of Al-Anbar's ruins. "Marcus carried this," she said, her voice steady but soft. "It's not in any museum, because we weren't meant to be remembered." The private's jaw tightened, but his eyes wavered. Another soldier, older, piped up. "You're saying you saved 15 men. Where's the proof?" Sarah's lips curved, not in anger but patience. "Proof's in the men who came home." General William Carter, standing at the room's edge, stepped forward, his voice low but commanding. "I was at Firebase Echo, 2007. Sarah's team pulled my unit from a slaughter. I saw her drag a wounded man through gunfire." The private's face flushed, his shoulders slumping. "I didn't know, ma'am," he muttered, sitting down. Sarah nodded, her tone gentle. "You weren't supposed to. That's how we worked." The badge gleamed in her hand, a relic of a war that left scars deeper than flesh. The room softened, the air shifting from doubt to respect. A young corporal, her voice quiet, asked, "Why keep it secret?" Sarah looked at the urn, her eyes distant. "Because the mission wasn't about us. It was about who we saved." Carter added, "Black Echoes was buried in classified files, but their courage wasn't." The soldiers sat silent, their skepticism replaced by something heavier, understanding. Sarah set the badge beside Marcus's urn, her fingers lingering. She didn't need their belief, only their willingness to listen. The promise she'd made to Marcus, to carry him home, felt closer now, as if the room's newfound respect was part of the journey, a bridge between a hidden past and a truth finally seen. The morning sun spilled across Fort Campbell's open field, casting a soft glow over the rows of soldiers standing at ease. Sarah Jenkins faced them, her weathered hands clasped behind her back, the Black Echoes badge now tucked in her pocket, its weight a quiet reminder of Marcus Tate. The urn bearing his name rested in her truck nearby, as if watching over her words. She stepped forward, her voice steady, cutting through the gentle Kentucky breeze. "I'm not here to teach you how to fight," she began. "You know that better than I ever did. But I'll tell you what Marcus Tate showed me. Freedom isn't in flags or speeches. It's in the moment someone steps between you and danger and says, 'Go. I've got this.'" The soldiers stood silent, their faces etched with focus. Sarah's eyes swept the crowd, landing on a young private, then a grizzled sergeant. "Marcus was Black Echoes like me. In Al-Anbar 2007 he took point, knowing the odds. He stayed so we could run. That's freedom, not a word but a sacrifice." Her voice wavered, but she stood taller. "It's the quiet choice to give someone else a chance to live." A soldier shifted, his boots scuffing the grass, but no one spoke. The air held a reverence, as if Marcus's presence lingered in her words. "He told me to take him home to Alabama," she continued, her gaze distant. "So I'm driving every mile, learning what we fought for." The soldiers straightened, their eyes locked on her. General William Carter stood at the field's edge, nodding silently. Sarah's voice grew firm. "Freedom is earned by those who carry the weight, by you, by Marcus, by every soul who doesn't quit." She stepped back, her hand brushing her chest where the badge rested. The soldiers didn't clap. Instead, as one, they saluted, their hands sharp against their brows, a silent vow. Sarah placed her hand over her heart, nodding once, her eyes glistening but unyielding. The promise to Marcus felt alive in that moment, not just in the urn, but in the soldiers before her, carrying his truth forward. She turned toward her truck, ready to drive on. Marcus's memory, a steady flame, guiding her home. The sun dipped low over Fort Campbell, bathing the courtyard in a warm, amber glow. Sarah Jenkins stood by her pickup, the urn with Marcus Tate's name glinting faintly on the passenger seat. The Black Echoes badge rested in her pocket, its weight a quiet anchor. General William Carter approached, holding a small, weathered box. He opened it, revealing a silver coin etched with a star, and the words, "For valor, for silence." "This is for you," he said, his voice steady. "And for Marcus." Sarah shook her head, her eyes firm but kind. "Keep it for the soldiers still fighting," she said. "Marcus didn't need coins, and neither do I." Carter nodded, respect deepening in his gaze. A young corporal, her face sun-browned from drills, stepped forward, holding a simple metal water bottle. "For your road trip, ma'am," she said, her voice soft. Sarah took it, her fingers brushing the engraving, "Fort Campbell, 2025. "Thank you," she murmured, her smile small but genuine. She turned to the gathered soldiers, their eyes fixed on her. "Don't judge a person by what you see," she said, her voice clear and measured. "A truck driver, a janitor, a stranger, they've got stories. Listen to them. That's how you find truth." The words hung in the air, simple but heavy, a lesson carved from years of carrying Marcus's promise. A sergeant in the back, his arms crossed, nodded slowly, his expression softened. The corporal who'd given the bottle spoke up. "What's next for you?" Sarah glanced at the urn, her voice steady. "Alabama, Marcus's home. Then, wherever the road takes me." Carter placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've changed this base," he said. "You've reminded us what courage means." Sarah shook her head again, her tone humble. "You all did that for me." She climbed into the truck, the water bottle now beside Marcus's urn, a new companion for the journey. The soldiers watched, some saluting, others simply standing in quiet respect. Sarah's words lingered, a call to see beyond appearances, to honor the unseen sacrifices in every soul. As she turned the key, the engine hummed to life, ready to carry her and Marcus closer to Alabama, their promise unbroken, their story now woven into the hearts of those she'd leave behind. The highway stretched before Sarah Jenkins's pickup, a ribbon of asphalt winding through Alabama's open fields, the sky ablaze with dusk's deep red. The urn bearing Marcus Tate's name sat steady on the passenger seat, its surface catching the last light, as if Marcus watched the road unfold. The Black Echoes badge, tucked in her pocket, felt like a quiet heartbeat, tying her to a past that still breathed. Sarah's hands rested on the wheel, her eyes fixed on the horizon, a faint smile curving her lips. "We're home, Marcus," she whispered, voice soft but sure. The engine hummed, smoother now after Fort Campbell's mechanics worked their magic. A folded map lay on the dash, marked with routes, and a note from the motor pool crew. "Welcome to Alabama. Fort Campbell sends you on." She chuckled, the sound warm against the evening's hush. The wind rushed through the open window, carrying the scent of earth and grass. Sarah tapped the photo beside the urn. Her and Marcus, young and fierce in combat gear, grinning through war's weight. "Still with me," she murmured, fingers lingering. The road blurred into twilight, but her path was clear, a promise kept mile by mile. Fort Campbell's lessons lingered, the soldiers' salutes, their questions, their respect. As night fell, Sarah turned onto a dirt road, guided by Marcus's old stories of home. A lone oak stood in a field, its branches wide, roots deep in Alabama soil. She stopped the truck, the engine ticking quiet, and stepped out, urn in hand. Under the oak, Sarah knelt, the ground cool beneath her. "This is it, buddy," she said, her voice catching. "Your sweet oaks." She set the urn gently against the roots, the etched name glinting in moonlight. A memory surged. Marcus in Iraq, sharing a cigarette, his eyes bright as he described this very tree, where he'd carved his initials as a kid. "Plant me here, Sarah," he'd said, half laughing, never thinking she'd have to. Her fingers traced the bark, finding those faded initials, a piece of him alive in the wood. She pressed her hand there, tears stinging but unshed. "You're home," she whispered, the words a vow fulfilled. Sarah stood, the night air soft, the stars sharp above. The photo stayed in the truck, but Marcus's presence felt woven into the land, the tree, her heart. She climbed back in, the map now folded, the road ahead open. Alabama's fields stretched endless, and beyond them, a world she'd keep exploring, carrying Marcus's memory, her promise unbroken, his truth, a steady flame, guiding her forward.